Hello, Courage Permission Slip listener. Before I get to today's episode, I want to take a moment to address the United States Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe versus Wade on June 24th, 2022, which stripped away the right to have a safe and legal abortion. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all people. This decision has dire consequences, especially on communities of color. The data shows that 60% of abortions are sought by people of color. This decision could also have harsh repercussions for other landmark decisions within the United States. And I encourage you, American and otherwise, to learn more about what you can do at podvoices.help. This and other resources are linked in the show notes below. I encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. I am your host, Kia, and today I am so excited that I get to welcome a friend, a fellow coach, a fellow former marketing executive, Lizzie Alberga, to the show. But before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit more about her. Lizzie is the founder and CEO of Collective Gain. She's an executive coach, author, and former marketing executive at .coms in Los Angeles. She specializes in coaching corporate leaders to find alignment in being unapologetically themselves while operating a new perspective of modern work and leadership maturity. Lizzie recently relocated from California, where she was born and raised, to a 7-acre certified natural habitat in North Carolina to enjoy nature, clean air, and more space. Welcome to the show, Lizzie.
Thank you. You're so good at that, Kia.
Thank you. Obviously, like when you were first getting ready to move to North Carolina, I remember having that conversation. I totally understood it because, I was getting ready to make my move up to Portland. But when I was reading your bio, the first thing I thought of, Lizzie, when reading about the farm that you live on, I was thinking about, remember that documentary that we all watched, The Biggest Little Farm? And I thought about that. I was like, we didn't talk about that, but was that your inspiration or part of your inspiration to going to North Carolina?
I think it was the start of listening to a call within for wanting space and a return to nature. Mm-hmm. I think I was drawn to it, and then I watched it, and there was some amount of truth in that was like, yes, this feels good to me.
Yeah.
And we don't have any sort of animals or anything on the land at this time, but probably going to have an orchard or maybe a pool or something. But yeah, I think it was the beginning of a truth journey for me.
Yeah. I love that. And I hope that I was going to say, I hope that you talk about that, but I know that you will, because you and I always have these really like truth bomb, like dig deep, go deep right away conversations. So with that, I really want to get into this, Lizzie, where, this show is all about helping people to give themselves permission to overcome fear, to make their goals and their dreams more important and bigger than the fear. And so the place that I would love to start with you, and I do feel like you are a great shining example of this, but I want to talk to you about courage and what it means to you.
Wow, courage is such a big word, and it's something that we get more of the more we practice it. I think like almost anything in life. And courage, for me, just started out as having the ability to ask questions I was afraid to know the answers to be honest. It wasn't even an action. And I think we think of courage as these huge leaps, right? And these big changes. Yeah. And really, courage could be the willingness to look in the mirror, right? And it could be like literally, and also like at ourselves, right? About who we've become or who we are, our actions, our thoughts. And that's, I think, where it starts. And every time I exercise courage or a client exercise courage in the smallest way, it allows us to operate more or to access more the next time. And I also think secondarily that courage is attached to truth. The more truth we have, the more courage we have. And so sometimes courage can be like a temperature gauge of, are we in alignment or not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you said. And I particularly love that you started with, the question piece, right? And this is something, I know you and I have talked about this, and I think about this quite a bit, when I'm thinking and talking about coaching and what it brings forward for people. And I always tell my clients, it's going to get worse before it gets better, because we are doing this personal inventory, this deep exploration. You're having someone who doesn't really know anything about your life ask you these really tough questions that force you to be honest in the moment. And I always say the reason why people don't readily jump into doing this kind of personal work is because of what they're going to discover when they do it, what they're going to find out about themselves or their life or their career, whatever it is. They're afraid of what they're going to uncover and then what they're going to have to do about that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. When you were saying that, it's almost as if, courage doesn't always equal change, but it does always go with uncertainty. Yeah. Always.
Yes.
And that is what, so many of us are trying to control our lives and the outcome and how people see us and how we experience things and how we keep ourselves safe. I mean, I literally just had a session this week with someone I speak to, that I realized how much I still believe I control outcomes. And
oh my gosh.
And she was like, so do you believe if you do good and you are in alignment that you can the outcome will be good? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And she's like, it doesn't really work that way. And I'm like, I know it doesn't, but it's very hard, right? To not be very uncomfortable with uncertainty. Yeah. And courage always is accompanied with uncertainty.
Yes. Yes. And I relate to that very much so. I remember I had a recent conversation with my therapist, and I was talking about some of my pain points. And my feeling was, so I help other people navigate that uncertainty. But for myself, I'm like, okay, well, I do this. I know this. This is the work that I've done. And I then am upset with myself because I don't have it figured out. And because I feel like I shouldn't be having these issues. I shouldn't be struggling. And my therapist was like, oh, look at you thinking that you're better than everyone else, that you hold yourself to a higher standard.
Yeah, I know what that feeling is to be a coach and to feel like you have to know it all. And the approach I've taken, and I think since the beginning what's been helpful for me, is I didn't start my self-development journey or Collective Gain, my company, as a coach. I started it as a participant in what it is like to go through a self-transformation process. And it has helped me to continue to share both on social media and in email with clients. Like, I'm also in evolution and in progress. And because I'm committed to my own progress and journey and being open about that, I come across so many things that are helpful for my clients and uncover. But I wrote a book that's coming out later this year. And I definitely have a little bit of wow, should I do that? Do I really know what I'm talking about? I'll probably publish this book and maybe in 5 years be like, well, 30% of it, maybe I would change. But I spoke to somebody about that once and they said, but that's everybody. I mean, that's every author, right? We are only a snapshot of who we are in this moment. Anything we say a producer can offer the world. And in 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, yeah, we're going to have a totally different perspective. But what we both have to offer in this moment, what you have to offer this moment, is worthy of someone needs that, right?
Yeah.
If we don't know, we only know 30% of what we're up to at any given time.
Right. Well, and so going to your point about how we're all in evolution and progress, I mean, that teases that out, that bears that to prove, because we we are works in progress, and what we know and the way that we support people and the way that we show up in our lives now is based on what we know to be true now. It's based on our experiences and our reactions to those experiences in this moment. But a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be totally different people. Totally different people. And then we'll have new learnings and guidance and insights to share at that time.
Yeah, I just had this quote that I published, which was, the darkest times lead to the biggest answers, because it's in the darkness that we really seek solutions.
Yes.
You know, when I recently had, and I've been a little bit just having a little bit of a roller coaster experience the last 6 months, and it's starting to come together, but I'm grateful for those times when I don't feel enough, or I feel like a failure, or I feel whatever, like I'm supposed to be here and I'm only here, you know. I'm grateful for that, because in those moments, like, I'm seeking answers and solutions that are dropping below the surface of just operating or just showing up kind of unsure. So I think that when we're in those lulls of life, it's okay to be there. Obviously, if it feels unsafe, reach out for help. But if you feel safe, but it's kind of a dark place, which I've been in, where you're just not feeling, it's not, you're not being like constructively kind, right? You're just kind of like down on yourself, you know? It's in those places where I'm like, okay, Lizzie, like, let's really think about what's going on here. Like, what isn't feeling good? What do you want? Like, and then I try different things, read books or podcasts, try different things. And then I start to find some footing. And of course, talking to a coach and therapist helps too.
Yes. But everything that you said there is right on the money. You can't figure out and get to that light that is shining ever so brightly at the end of the tunnel. You can't get there until you start exploring at least one step, right? At least one thing that can help you get clarity or help you to get understanding about what it is that you're experiencing and feeling in that moment.
That's right.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And like, part of getting to know yourself, and this is why I really believe in and why we offer at Collective Gain, like intuitive readings, and we have human design and astrology, because sometimes you're operating out of alignment with who you are. So by being curious about who you are in your makeup, you start realizing like, oh, I don't feel good and I can't be stepping into courage because I'm completely depleted, or I'm acting out of alignment with like who I am, or oh, I write, there's a transit going on. I happened to me the other day. This astrologist was like, well, there's 3 transits that are happening that a lot of people don't ever have all 3 in their entire lifetime. And you have all 3 happening at the same time. And I was like, that felt really good to me, right? I was like, oh, someone gets me, like I felt like, oh no, I'm not totally going crazy. Like, there's some universal things happening,
Yeah,
so
right.
I support those things too, because it's a way to just start, it's a part of inquiry, whether you believe in it or not. It's just inquiry and getting more data and feedback to see how it feels.
Yeah. Love that. So, we've been talking about evolutions and shifts that we're making in our lives. And I'm curious to hear from you how to giving yourself permission to be courageous shift the course of your life.
Wow. Oh, it's changed my entire life for the better. I think I would not be married right now if I wasn't still married. If I wasn't courageous, I would not have experienced the joy of being in a relationship and partnership with a horse, which I have. I can talk about that. I certainly would not own my own business and have experienced what it is to be an entrepreneur and a CEO and a founder, which tremendously helps me in my coaching with my clients, especially those that are CEOs. Giving myself the permission to do hard things has made me realize more of who I am. And sometimes, you don't always like who you are, right? And that's okay, right? There's like parts of yourselves you want to change or you want to be different, but giving myself the courage or giving myself the permission to have courage to do these things has made my life very interesting and very dynamic and an adventure. And I mean, as my mother says to my husband, you'll never be bored married to Lizzie, you know? And I think part of that is, you know, I'm not trying to seek adventure. I am simply being open to what life is. And through that courage too, I have experienced complete miracles, you know? And so I see life as this very magical place because I've been willing to take that step, and then life takes its step, right? So it's become a more spiritual experience because of giving myself permission to have, you know, the courage to do things that aren't maybe conventional or what others would do.
Yeah. I love what you said just there about how you take a step and then life takes a step, right? It's like what I hear is this being in partnership with life of like, okay, so if you're going to show up, then I'll show up.
Right. And I say it to my clients that oftentimes when things aren't going well is because we're not in conversation with life. You have to have a conversation. Life is talking to us all the time.
All the time.
And in human development and it's, you know, adult maturity, which is something that, you know, you can study as a leadership coaching tool too, and it's like a psychological framework, is this concept that life evolves you. It evolves people. And through that evolution, there is a conversation happening, and it's up to you whether you're listening and moving with it, or if you're tuning it out and kind of holding on to what should be. And I think when we get in conversation, not only are we able to maneuver through life better, but we're open to more opportunities. We're open to different sides of ourselves. And I think there's like there's a richness that comes that I have now that I didn't have when I was more closed or more kind of linear in my career and approach to life.
Yeah. What you just mentioned there about, you know, doing all the shoulds, right? The tyranny of the shoulds, right? Like that bargaining that we do with ourselves, which you mentioned when we started recording, this bargaining that we do of, well, if I do this, or I should be doing this to get this, or to feel like this. And if we can let go of that tyranny, if we can stop shoulding on ourselves, then what you just mentioned happens, right? Then it's like you start opening yourself up and you start seeing things that have been in front of you probably the whole time.
Yeah.
Or you see these things, these messages that life keeps sending to you, you hear them or receive them in a different way when you're open, when you let go of that rigidness.
Yes. And there is freedom in that. And I think people, I can kind of see them going like, well, why? Why do I want to do that? It seems hard or scary or all the things, because they look at a lot of people who have taken courageous steps and they don't necessarily like, oh, their life's so easy. You know, they don't seem that way, you know, and I think there's this fallacy to believe that then yours is, right? Like then living a life not fully enjoy or full realization of this magical place you live better, or is it numbing, you know? And there's a part of me that like really craves feeling fully alive. And, you know, people go for that feeling, often drugs, alcohol, sex, all sorts of things, right? You know, adrenaline junkies, they call themselves too. Like there is this desire to feel alive. And I think sometimes in life when we are in, you know, in the shoulds, as you call it, like there's a numbness that comes. So I would ask people to do some inquiry there, like, how alive do I feel? Do I feel alive? And you know what? I find this a lot with men that I coach, that men have really are I feel like a lot of men that I talk to with coaching are very shut off. There's a primal energy within a man that or within the male energy that is, you know, really not been approved of by society in a lot of ways, because there's been really, you know, terrible things that have happened with kind of immature and unregulated male energy, 1,000%. But there's also a very respectful, loving male energy that I feel like has also been shut down. And I think men carry a numbness, and maybe why drugs and alcohol are more prevalent, right, with men, because there's this numbness. And so it's this, how do we get every human being to come through in their aliveness in a way that's in creation, in cooperation with each other, respectful conversation with ourselves, with each other, with life, with spirit, with all of it.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, I love that. Just lots of beauty in what you just shared there, Lizzie. But something that you mentioned a moment ago, the horses. What? And I dig into this because, one, I love horses. Like, I've been riding horses ever since I was a little kid. And horses, I know they scare many people, but horses are very spiritual, intuitive, healing animals. What is it that drew you to getting a horse, and what has that experience been like for you?
Yes. First, come please be my neighbor. Let's have horses together. I didn't know you rode horses since you were a kid. I started at 40, so you can teach me some things. Okay. So horses, wow. Like what I've experienced. So I started riding at 40 because I went to a barn. I wanted to ride as a kid, never got the opportunity. So my daughter gets everything I wanted. So she has the canopy bed in the pink room, and now she rides horses. I didn't have any of those things. My mom did a great job, but anyway, so she is riding horses, and I see all these older women at the barn, and I thought, why are these like 60-year-old women riding horses? So I realized it's not too late for me. So my 40th birthday, about a year and a half ago, I started riding, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And what I found through horses is there are our greatest teachers. They are prey animals. And so to have a predator, a human, right, like get on their back, which is what like a lion would do, right? Or a tiger, a bobcat would jump on their back. And they're herd animals, and they're safety in herd. And so now when you ride a horse, you take them out of their herd and you put a prey animal on top of them, and they actually cooperate. And the way I've studied getting to know horses has been through this much more of a conversation about listening. And they are sentient beings, which means they feel energy.
Yes.
And so if you approach a horse totally unconscious of them, they might run from you and not let you catch them. They might get defensive. And these are horses that aren't shut down. Like there are horses that are kind of shut down and not even real horses anymore, right? Those are like your trail horses that are just, but a horse that still has its natural instincts, they can feel presence and energy. And what has been so healing for me is it's a reflection of how I'm showing up. I have to be present for my own safety. I have to be very present with the horse, and I have to be in conversation with them. So I might have a decision of what I want to do that day with this horse, but they may not be there. And I have to respect that, because horses obviously can really hurt you. And so to be safe actually becomes a place of being in conversation. Isn't that interesting, right? Is that the joy and the relationship and the trust is built on mutual listening. Yeah. And that is what I have. Two horses. I have one named Sparky. He's adorable, little chestnut, 3.5-year-old, and he's getting trained with a trainer of mine because he's young and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I learned a lot from her, and that's been fun. I'm like the most proud horse mom in the world, and I like can't wait to see him in his like first little show or something. And he's an angel. I mean, he was like, raised really well and didn't have any real traumas and acts that way, right? Loves people, curious. And then I have another horse, Ruby, who's an off the track thoroughbred, and she raced for 2 years, 25 races. And if anybody knows anything about race horses, there's not a lot of conversation happening. Correct. There's a lot of, you're going to do this, and it actually benefits on their flight instinct, right? That's what a race is. Now, there are definitely some horses who love to race, absolutely, but there are many who are just in panic mode, right? And they're just running for their life and they don't know what's happening, right? So she's more that, and she, she's bucked. I haven't actually fallen off, but she's bucked a lot with me on her. I've had to hop off. We've had some issues. So it's really taught me how to listen and how to have patience. Yeah. And she is healing me as I heal her. And it has been such an emotional journey, but I just know in my gut that there's this most magnificent horse here that people have given up on over and over again.
Mm.
And it's been one of my experiences in life I'll never forget, being with her. And I can't wait to see
Ooh.
what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love that. I love hearing about your horses, Sparky and Ruby.
Yeah.
So in talking about the horses, you talked about how, they're prey animals, and, racing really kind of leverages their fear instinct. And I'm curious to hear from you, Lizzie, what fears do you notice popping up for you?
Like in general or with horses?
In general.
General. Oh gosh, all sorts of fears. I think there's my biggest fear in life is not becoming who I dream to be.
Mm.
I think that's common with a lot of
Mhm.
people, right? I think that we have these ideas about who we want to be. And sometimes that's wrapped up in career, like we want to be in terms of like our career, which I definitely have, right? There's also, how we want to live, how we
Mhm.
want to experience life. And that's a real fear for mine. Like, am I ever going to quote unquote make it? And I know that
Mm.
there's not a destination. Like, I know all these things from my
Yeah.
coaching and whatnot, but
Sure.
I can't help but feel a little bit of that destination desire.
Mm.
And there's this fear that I'm never going to quite have enough courage or enough resolve or enough, I don't know, fill in the blank to feel that sense of I'm so proud of myself.
Mm.
And
Mm. Are you proud of yourself now for how far you've come, Lizzie, and for the things that you've done?
yes, I am, but I will say that there's part of what I've been struggling with over the last maybe year and a half is there's a little bit of like not good enoughness, right? There's a little bit of like
Mm.
what could be and what isn't. And just recently I've started to see where I've been playing small. So I
Mhm.
have a big vision, right? And yet sometimes the actions don't match that. So I think it's important that if you have a really big vision, you have the courage to have the vision and you have the courage to start the vision, you also have the courage to do what it takes to deliver that vision.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that I recently spoke to someone who's is actually a client, but also very much a mentor in some ways. And he's, at the upper echelons of success in many ways. And the way what he was saying to me about finding a new way and not worrying about, these giant competitors who have like $500 million that they've raised, right? And I'm like
Mhm.
self-funded. Like, I'm like, how
Mhm.
can I compete against that? And he just really made me feel empowered to say, like, don't worry about that. Like, if you
Yeah.
have something good going, like, bet on yourself in a big way. And I
Yeah.
think I was taking the steps in courage and I've made a lot of progress. We have a company over the last 5 years. We've coached hundreds and hundreds of people, happy clients, like wonderful people,
Yes.
so many good things.
Mhm.
And yet some level of success that I want to experience is partially clouded in this. Well, I haven't really been fully activating what's possible. And I
Mm.
think that that's the timing of it is perfect, right? So that's a fear, right? That I'm now realizing I'm feeling more empowered in, but I think it's my biggest one that kind of been around,
Mm.
for a decade or two.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there's, all sorts of other little ones, but being out here is actually in North Carolina on land has been very helpful because I think when I was in Los Angeles, I have 3 children and there's just a lot going on, right? And
Yes.
so I had more fears and more anxiety about
Mm.
being a parent and being a mom and all the things and the kids and the transport and everything that need to happen. I think here I feel I could send the kids outside and I feel free to
Sure.
do that. I
Mhm.
think just myself in terms of my personal safety, I feel very safe. And then also just there's so many things it's hard to explain, just like the energy around, I feel much
Yeah.
more grounded because
Yeah.
everybody around me is either retired or very happy with their life, like from the
Mhm.
grocery store clerk to like the executive down the street. Like they're all like, nobody wants more. People just feel really
Mm.
content, which is not what LA feels like.
Yeah. Right. 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 It's like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next
Right.
biggest thing? Yeah. Yeah. Where, if you're willing to name it, you talked about, places where you realize you've been playing small in service that are not in service of this vision that you have for yourself. Are you willing to name where one place you've been holding yourself small?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest one is not getting help. So,
Mm,
thinking I can do it all or
yes.
thinking I need to do it all, is one of them.
Yeah.
For a long time, I wasn't willing to be on social or post my own thoughts and ideas and didn't want to be seen, which I've overcome, but the biggest one is just money, right? Like I get very angry and bitter that other people want and have millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to do things with. And I'm like over here, like spending $250 a month on AdWords and like, oh my gosh, And so I think for me, what I'm looking for in this next stage is to be okay I probably wouldn't raise money, but I can get a business loan because of the state of the business. I can probably, get a business loan that would enable me to hire more help. And now I do have people I've hired for business development. I do have social media and marketing support, but to have a PR, and I do have book editors. So as the business has grown, I've been able to hire people at fractional, but I think the full vision of what I see is a full team around me, right? And obviously I want to pay those people. And so that takes money. And sometimes when I can see and feel the business trajectory start taking off, which it is even more, I feel like that's the time I could feel more comfortable on getting some capital to support the growth, which is scary, right? Taking a loan, right? It's a scary thing. But that's one place I think I've been playing small, is really trying to do it all on like a shoestring budget and like just okay, that's great. But in a way to find out where I was playing small for other people, where you might feel that is where you're resentful of other people or angry about the people.
Ooh,
right?
Yes.
Because I was angry about these other companies that had all this money and I was bitter about that. Well, it's because I haven't been being courageous enough to say, but why I can go get money to help grow my business. I don't need $50 million, but maybe 100 or 200,000 would be really supportive. But I was afraid of that.
Yeah, the comparison piece and not looking at what's going on in your lane, but so to use our conversation about the horses and the racing, which is convenient since the Derby is this weekend at recording time, how they wear those little blinders so that they don't veer off, they're not. And for us, as especially as business owners, but just people in general, right? Like, this is a pain point that I hear come up for so many clients of, well, I'm not doing as well as so-and-so is. I don't have the title that so-and-so does. And we've been working for the same amount of time. And it's so important to remember that there's a whole ecosystem of things that are happening that are way outside of your control. You have no idea about these other people's circumstances, what's happening behind the scenes. And it's so important to remember that your chapter is not someone else's chapter and their chapter is not your chapter. Like we have to, and when I say stay in our own lane, I don't mean like not be bold and courageous and do things that people, might clutch their pearls at. I don't mean that. I mean, like, run your race.
That's
do the work that is yours to do, because what has been divinely inspired and downloaded to us is not the same thing that's been downloaded and gifted to someone else. And so it's so important to remember to run your own race. And I have to remind myself of this every single day. Every day.
I think we all do. I mean, the social media obviously has highlighted the comparison game and cause of depression and all the things, the stats we see. But a big part of it, I always ask myself, and if people are feeling like resentful of other people because of where they are and where they're not, I would say, well, what are they doing that you're not willing to do? Like, maybe that's something you're not willing to do, or maybe it's something you're playing small, or you don't believe in yourself, or you're not taking courage. Like, are you willing to speak up? Are you willing to ask for what you want? Are you willing to have boundaries? Are you willing? Like, there's a lot of things that success requires.
Yes.
And there is a boldness with the truth and the download you talked about, with both, right? And I think for me in this next evolution of the business, I did spend the last 6 months going, do I want to keep it and grow it? Or do I want to small and just be my own person? Do I want to keep it and grow it? Or do I want to just be my own, coach, just my own brand myself?
Right.
And the answer was no, I do want to keep it and grow it. And as I've invested in it and I've played bigger in that arena, I realized what I've been missing is actually how much I love working with more people and how I love a bigger identity. And I love being more bold and courageous. So to ask yourself, if you're feeling jealous of somebody else, what are they doing that you wish you were doing? Or how are they being that you wish you would do or give yourself, right? Or like the mom that's going to the spa day and you're rolling your eyes, is it because you're not giving yourself self-care? And they are, right? Or somebody didn't invite you somewhere. Is it because you're inviting people you don't really want to invite and they actually didn't invite people? They just want to do their own thing. And now you're jealous that, why do I invite people I don't want to invite? I want to just do my own thing.
Yeah. I mean, that when you do, and this is the scary thing, right? That we talked about at the beginning of what you're going to find out, what you're going to discover when you do that questioning and that unpacking of what's going on within me that is causing me to be upset by or triggered by X, right? Like that does not feel good. It doesn't feel good.
Well, because at the end of the day, this goes back to the horses too. Like you're the problem, like in a way we are our own problem and there is so much opportunity around us. Obviously it varies and it differs based on where you are and who you are, but there is definitely options. There are definitely steps you can take for every single person. And when we shut ourselves down and we start blaming others, we disempower ourselves instead of being like, what is one step I could take? And that one step in courage will lead to 20 more. And before you know it, like you've totally changed your life in a positive direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Lizzie, so many gems that you just dropped in a very short period of time. And I just really quickly, I want to go back because this came up to me as you were talking about, do I want to stay, just be my own brand and be my own coach and go from there? Or do I want to be this bigger thing? And so you made the decision, but what was at that fork in the road? What did you have to allow yourself to do or to believe or think in order to make that decision that you did want to go bigger?
Yeah. Well, I think it started off with like a year of denying I even had the feeling. So I think there was a good year that I was just like, nope, like the blinders, like, nope, I started this company, I had a vision for this company. This is all there is. I have people that work for me. We have clients. Like there is no choice. Right. Even if I was feeling icky or something was off, I wasn't really giving myself. So that was a year of that. And then finally, when I admitted, you know what, the first point was I'm going to explore, I'm even going to consider the option that I might close the business.
Yeah.
That feels like failure when you're an entrepreneur, right? To close a business. So to just even just be in that place of thinking about that as an option and then starting to explore both. And then I did, go to an intuitive and I did obviously look at my human design. And what I discovered in this process was I knew in my gut, I was like, but it just doesn't feel right to say that it's done. I don't think it's done. It doesn't feel right. Yeah. But I also felt what felt right. Because if I imagine it just like going away, there was freedom that came with that, to be honest. Like I felt a sense of freedom because there is a responsibility, there, but it didn't, it felt like there was value that was untapped. I was just kind of throwing back out into the universe,
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that doesn't feel right. And so, but there was some independence that felt good for me. And really what it came down to, what I realized was, I just need to operate differently within the business. The business, I need to focus more on my genius zone, and I need to get help and support in the places where I don't thrive, where I don't love. And I also need to connect to my authentic self and who I am and what I want this business to be.
Yeah.
And through that process, and this was coaching sessions, it was intuitive sessions, it was journaling, it was being in the darkness of like, what am I doing? All of that came to a place that said, yes, okay, I do want to move forward. And I will tell anybody, if you have like a question like this to be answered, if you hold an intention of wanting to get an answer, this has happened to me many times. I had 2 sessions with a business coach and I got my answer. 2 sessions. That's it. It wasn't, something extravagant. I had my answer because I was so firm and I had already done all this thinking. Right. And I went in with, I want to make a decision. And when we moved here, it was the same thing. I had done all this thinking and I had a session with coaches. Like, I want to get an answer by the end of this call. And I had one.
And that is what is so powerful of being focused on and being in the energy of the what, whatever the what is. Just like you said, it was just simply, I want an answer, right? And when you are so laser focused on that what, then the how and the answers to get that, or the path to get that, starts to reveal themselves. Just like what we were talking about, like you start getting messages in places that have probably been in front of you the entire time. But now that you're open to it and focused, focus that energy, focus that light, then that's when things can start to unfurl. But you have to be, instead of like having all of your energy like diffused everywhere, like really get clear on what is this thing that I'm trying to do, or the answer that I'm trying to get.
Yes. And I had a coach tell me, this was brilliant. And she said, don't let the how get in the way of the what.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you said. And that is like, was the biggest advice, because she actually said in a funny way. I think it was kind of like, don't let the how be like a boner killer kind of idea of like, don't let the like passion and the excitement get killed by like the how, And I was like, okay, that really resonates, So, if we get to know the what we want and we make a decision, we start seeing the how, and the how starts coming to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So good, Lizzie. So you've given multiple answers to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway to bottom line it. There is someone who is listening to or watching our conversation right now who has the what in mind. They've got the vision, they've got the goal, they've got the idea, and they are still making fear more important than the dream, goal, vision. What is your guidance for them to start moving forward?
I guess I would ask them, how good are they willing to let it get? And if they're willing to let it get real good, then they need to start taking one single step, a phone call, a conversation, a spreadsheet, a website draft, whatever it is, a conversation with their boss. They just take one step. By making the decision, by understanding that the idea they have is inspired to them, that if they say yes to it, they will be supported in it. And the way they say yes is by taking action. I call it inspired action. So the way the universe communicates, in my opinion, in my experience, is by you making a decision, and your decision is supported by your actions, by your forward action. And it doesn't always matter exactly what the step is. Just take one, and the next one will reveal, and miracles and grace will come your way. And at any point you can change, at any point.
Yes.
So courage is a process. There is no step too small. Listening to this podcast, sending this podcast to a friend, having a conversation about this podcast with somebody, all of that is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And just as you said, tying a nice bow on this, when you take a step, life takes a step.
That's right.
So good. Lizzie, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I so enjoyed, as I knew I would, but I so enjoyed having this conversation with you.
I did too. Thank you, Kia. You're a light and a dream in this world, and I'm so grateful to know you.
Thank you so much. Lizzie, where can people get in touch with you or learn more about you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram at Lizzie Alberga. So Lizzie Alberga, ALB as in boy, ERGA. And collectivegain.com is where you can, there's blog posts and obviously a coaching membership trial. And we're just here to support you. So don't hesitate to reach out either on Instagram or through the website.
Fabulous. And I will include your links in the show notes so that people can connect directly with you there. Thank you again, Lizzie, for joining today.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this episode of Courage Permission Slip. If you have found us on YouTube, make sure that you like this episode and subscribe so that you can be notified when new episodes are available. And if you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, please be sure to rate and review so that other people can find and enjoy this content as well. That's it for today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure that you are taking steps to make your goals bigger and more important than your fears. See you on the next episode.